Hello, everybody. Very warm welcome to our third session of the Mortgage Administrator event today. My name is Jamie Hurst. I'm the Publishing Director at Mortgage Solutions. And in our next session today, we're going to dig into the protection market. We're going to look into the link between mortgages and protection and the vital role that administrators play in ensuring protection coverage and how to work with brokers and lenders to meet your clients' protection needs. This session is going to be hosted by and delivered by Scott Mcloughlin, the National Sales Manager for LV. Scott's going to run through some slides and give us a bit of insight into the GI market and the solutions that you can provide with your clients, after which we'll be opening up for Q&A with Scott after his presentation. So please do send in your questions via the Q&A functionality on your screen. Without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you, Scott.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Emmy. Right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for your time and attending today. I've got a handful of slides to run through here. And the aim of these is to provide you with some tools and some insight that hopefully help support that GI conversation. Now, the role of an administrator in this process is probably one of two when it comes to GI, and it's something we advocate pretty heavily when trying to enable firms and principals to talk about home insurance. Now, the mortgage advisor may be the first one that initially quotes the general insurance and then leaves it to the role of the administrator to pick up the processing of that and trying to get that onboarded. Or the other side of it, the mortgage advisor might not have anything to do with it and simply may warm up the lead for the administrator to pick up. Now, I'm sure most of you will know that when we're doing that mortgage fact find or a mortgage application, when it comes to home insurance, the buildings element is one of the only compulsory policies that's needed in this journey. And quite simply, without a buildings policy, you're not getting that mortgage approved. Lenders are looking that is in place and the building is adequately insured. Should the worst happen, that damage or the building could be repaired or rebuilt or whatever it needs to be to make sure they're obviously still receiving their mortgage payments in that agreement. So how do we help open up that conversation? And the first way of doing that is explaining to customers, raising their awareness of just how much stuff they have. And I'll open this question up to you all. Obviously, you don't have to answer this now, but you can put it in the chat for later. But if you were to sit here and go, well, look at your house and look at the things around you, how much things are in there that you would deem as your contents? Now, by that, you can see from one of the checklists that we have there, you might be thinking about your sofa, your cupboards, your bed, your wardrobe, things like that. Now, it doesn't seem like a lot in the grand scheme of things. Now, 5 years ago, the average amount of content that was in somebody's house was about £35,000. And that's the average. And that's still a significant amount of money. Fast forward today, due to inflation, that number's nearly doubled. And it's circa £62,000 now of contents items are in people's house. And a scary way of identifying just how much people have is if you were to pick your house up, turn it upside down, everything that drops out of that roof that falls to the floor is your content. So imagine that now when it all falls into the garden, all of that items there you need to replace in the event that your contents are completely destroyed in the event of a fire or a flood, let's say. But it doesn't tell you the whole picture, does it? So if we think of a wardrobe, okay, well, my wardrobe fell out, and that might be £200 to get a wardrobe, that's not a problem. But what about every bit of clothing that's in that wardrobe? I can guarantee it's not £200 that's in there. You know, there might be a £200 suit or, a £100 pair of shoes in there. That is contents. Your kitchen. Think about all your utensils, your cutlery, your pots, your pans, all the appliances. That is all of contents as well. The bookcase, the games, your Lego sets. You see the background of me here, avid Lego collector. All of that is contents. And when you start adding it up, that's a scary sum of money that in the event you need it replacing overnight, how do you afford that? People have got barely enough savings at the moment to cover bills for the next couple of months, let alone replacing the entire contents of the house in such a short period of time. So the administrator could use this letter and this PDF document to put in front of the client to get them to start thinking about, well, how much contents do I actually need? Now, you'll look at high level numbers if they go on a comparison site, and it might be £20,000 or £30,000 of contents. Well, the numbers that obviously we've just mentioned to you guys show that it just simply isn't enough. And this document is a really good way of bringing that to life for your clients to realise that they need that little bit more. So yeah, use this one. I think it's really, really helpful to do that. The other document that you can get here is the house viewing checklist. Now, many people are buying a house probably for the first time, and they're a little bit deer in the headlights with it. So again, the document here gives them that nice little walkthrough guide of things that they should probably have a look at when they're looking at the house that they might want to buy, or they're doing a second or a third viewing of it. And this will get them to look at things they probably didn't look at when they're doing a house viewing. Because let's be honest, when we do a house viewing, we're probably looking at which wall can I knock through to create an ensuite, or how can I rip that kitchen out and replace it. It misses all the really important things, like what's the condition of the roof looking like? Are there missing tiles? What's the quality of the windows, the doors? Are they sealed correctly? Is there any sort of cracks in the building work that, not subsidence, but they might need to be addressing through decorating costs? The checklist will give them an idea of that. But again, both documents are designed to really elevate your importance of why probably a home insurance policy isn't just a bit of a tick box for my mortgage. It's something I actually need, and I should give a little bit more due care and attention to. So some really good documents here that will provide you a bit more of an insight to your clients. Next slide. I think this one's a really good one, and you can do this example now while you sat on this call. And now, again, you can put these into the chat, and I'd love to hear some of the numbers at the end of the call, maybe. But if you were to sit there now at the desk you're in, and you empty your pockets or your bag or whatever you've got there right now of anything that you carry around with you, and by that I mean things like laptops, mobile phones, sunglasses, purse, makeup, water bottle, jewelry, all of that sort of stuff that we take for granted a little bit. So, for example, I might finish this call now and nip out to go, go for a walk or go to the shop or do whatever I need to do. But I'm going to go and grab my bag because I might want to go and sit in a coffee shop for a bit and do some work. But without even thinking about it, in my backpack, I've got a laptop, a phone, and my wallet. None of that is insured, because as soon as I leave the house, anything that happens to those items, lost, stolen, or damaged, is on me. And people don't think about that. People are happy to insure their Apple iPhones for, I don't know, £30, £40 a month, however much that costs to insure iPhone. I will tell you now, it won't cost you £30 a month to add an Apple iPhone onto your home insurance policy. So sometimes we try and get people to flip home insurance on its head. What's important to people, really? Now, if I want to make sure that a few of my jewelry items and these tech things, or my wallet are covered, or if I'm out with my kids, their gaming console, if they got a handheld console with them, is that covered in the event that something happens? If we go away for the weekend, or we pop to the shops, or even if we go on holiday, this all covers there. Are those items covered for me? And personal possessions is a really good way of selling home insurance to do that. So instead of focusing down on the buildings and the contents part, if you found that as a bit more of a challenge, go down this route. You're going to know your clients more, because you could literally do these backpack tests with them while you sat in front of them, or if you're doing an office visit or a face-to-face with any of these clients. Say, well, I can insure all of those items for you in the event in or away from the home, even if you go on holiday. How much are they worth? And again, you've got that document there for them to really highlight that I didn't realise I'm walking around with £2,000, £3,000, £5,000 worth of stuff without even thinking about it. Well, again, as that administrator, you can say, well, that's fine. I can make sure a policy would cover you in the event that anything of that happens, and I can add that into your home insurance. So it means you've got one policy then that covers everything for you, rather than have multiple insurance policies that cover a little bit of everything. So again, maybe try and flip it on its head. It's another way of looking at home insurance. First time buyer's guide. Now, we know this is a big market, and as we said before, a lot of this is the first time that any home buyer is going to even come across half of the terminology that is used in this space. First time buyers haven't got a clue what you mean when you say we're going to do a survey report, or You need to go and engage with a solicitor. Do they know why half of this stuff is needed? Probably not. So as the administrator, again, you've got a fantastic opportunity here to walk them along that journey with you. And the 2 PDFs that we have on there will do exactly that. They pull across a step-by-step guide of a typical mortgage journey, all the way from I found my property, I'm doing an affordability check, we're now going to do a fact find, we're now doing the mortgage submission, we're now going to talk about GI. It talks about everything in a step-by-step guide for them. But again, the purpose of it is to bring that mortgage journey to life for those clients. So as and when you're having a conversation, it's not a shock factor to them. They've already been brought along with that journey from the initial outset of we're going to speak to home insurance with you at some point. The document then will make reference to things like they should probably consider to do during that journey, which could be things like, have you checked out the local schools in the area? Have you checked out the doctors, shops, travel links, and of course it will mention home insurance in there. But again, all of the information that they then complete on any of those forms that they give back to you gives you information. So if they start to make things like, well, have you checked the local schools? And they go, well, no, I haven't got schools. I haven't got children, so I don't need to worry about that at the moment. Okay, that's fine. So you know that whenever you're speaking about home insurance, anything that's relevant to a child when it comes to home insurance, don't speak about it, because there's no point in speaking about it. Home insurance policies cover you for so many things that are just a lot of noise in there if it's not relevant to you. Another example, it covers you for items if you have an elderly relative in a care home. Well, if I don't have an elderly relative in a care home, I don't care about that. But I don't know if that's the case until I've spoken to somebody. So this first-time buyer guide will give you a good example of building a profile on the client that you're trying to help buy the house, and then using that information to link the home insurance conversation to. And it's the one bit of advice that is still true today that I've given for many years. I've done this. Home insurance is easily sold once it's made to feel personal to the person that's in front of you. And by that, we mean is pulling out those USPs that they feel they would make use of. So if they've got children, okay, accidental damage is probably good. Have they got pets? Accidental damage will be good. Maybe they're elderly and they haven't got any of these children. So you might need help in the event of your boiler breaking. Well, I'm going to reference home emergency because that would be very relevant to you in your circumstances. So anything that gives you more of a profile on the customer will ultimately help you sell a home insurance policy. Now, those are the main 3 pages to cover off when you're looking at people that are doing a first-time buyer, a home mover, or just what we call a straightforward mortgage journey. But one of the biggest markets that is still true today, obviously, is the remortgage space. And to sell GI a remortgage is incredibly, incredibly hard. And we genuinely believe that home insurance is a fantastic way to open up those conversations. And the first example I'll give you with this is many people, many advisors now are obviously recommending mortgage deals that go to 5 or 10 years because of the uncertainty at the moment in the country. And that's fine. How do you open up a conversation in 4.5 or 9.5 years' time when you have to review that mortgage deal with somebody you haven't spoken to since you put that mortgage deal in place? Me personally, if my mortgage advisor did a deal today and then picked up the phone to me in 9 years' time, I couldn't remember the colour of the hair, let alone what the name was or what they did for me. More than likely, if they've given me a mortgage deal that was with a particular bank, the bank has probably reached out to me already. And I've renewed it with a bank or something else. So it's missing an opportunity. GI will give you a fantastic opportunity to have an annual conversation with your client. Because the home insurance renews every single 12 months, you will see that entire renewal process. So as much as we handle it for you, we can share all that information with you to say, here's their renewal quote. Here's anything that we know has changed. So they might have made a claim, for example. We can give you all that information. So within your role, you can review that and then have the conversation with the client to say, we've seen your home insurance renewal. It still looks really competitive in terms of the price and the coverage we give you. From our point of view, we would recommend that you keep that product, as obviously as advisors would do. However, in that conversation, you might be hit with a curveball by the client saying, that's great, I'm all good with that. But I did want to have a chat about you actually, because I'm in the process of changing jobs, or actually my partner is now pregnant, for example. Now, with all of those come new opportunities, not only with home insurance, but with all the other products that they have as well. And we'll use an example of somebody might say, actually, I've recently got engaged. Well, that's fantastic. Many congratulations on that. 12 months ago, you weren't engaged, you were a single couple, or you might have lived on your own. That's fine. Now you are engaged. All of a sudden, there's one item that's now found its way into that house that could be worth hundreds or thousands of pounds that is insured. And you're on about the engagement ring. And because it's an engagement ring, referencing back to the slide that I did previously, it's something you're taking in and away from your home. How many people here have got their engagement or the wedding rings insured? Probably not many. We see the data. Not a lot of people do that. But that's a really good opportunity then, as within the role you're doing, is to maintain that contact with those customers to say, well, I can put that onto your home insurance for you. So let me add that in. You've got children, many congratulations. Do we now need to look at accidental damage on your policy? Because, you know, if you like my kids, they enjoy throwing their cars and their toys at my TV, and that becomes accidental damage. Gives you an element to have that conversation yearly. And as I mentioned at the start of that, that's not limited to home insurance then. You might have had a life policy that you took out when you started the mortgage. Brilliant, fantastic. But now you've got children. Does it need children's critical illness added to it? How would you have known that that customer needed children's critical illness on that policy if you didn't speak to them for 10 years' time until that mortgage term came to renew? Imagine that customer, you did everything you did from day one and given them all the policies they needed to that were right for them at that point. But in 7 years' time, their life was very, very different, and their policies were basically worthless because they didn't cover them for what they needed in today, which might have been that children's element, or they may have changed jobs, for example. So don't look at GI as just that tick box exercise to say, oh, you need buildings covered, it's mandatory, or I need to make sure, you know, this and that is covered. It's a brilliant way to keep in regular contact with your customers. So fully recommend using our remortgage engaging tool. I think it's really, really valuable. Coming on to our smart quote system now, there may be many of you that have already seen this, or maybe not, but those of you that have taken out home insurance in the past, or you've sold it before, you've seen how it works. Many people love a comparison website because they love to get a 2-for-1 cinema ticket, they love to get a cuddly toy from there, or whatever it's given away at this particular time. Have you ever tried to do one of those journeys? It's 20, 30, 40 questions, and it'll take the best part of an hour of your life to try and figure it out. Whenever you get those prices displayed at the end of it, you will ultimately get in the cheapest policy they can find in the market. What they are absolutely not considering in all of that is the quality of the product. Next time you do your own quote on a comparison site, look at the prices, that'll look brilliant. But then very next to it, look at the de facto star rating of it. I would put money on the majority of products that are at the top of that list for being competitive on price are probably somewhere in a 2 or 3 star rated product. And when you come into home insurance, I don't know why you'd be wanting to be accepting anything less than a 5-star product. That product needs to put your house back into the state it was in before an event ever happened. The same any other policy would do. So don't skimp on home insurance when it comes to it. So our smart quote system tries to alleviate 2 reasons of why people don't do home insurance. And it's usually a can't or a won't attitude. Now, if they can't, it's down to processes. And funnily enough, one of the ways we try and bridge that gap is getting firms to bring in administrators to try and help with that. If they won't, it's probably a time issue. Now, with time, we like to think that our smart quote system eradicated that. Our smart quote system, if you haven't seen it, takes 5 questions for you to get to the quote screen. And all those questions are what you can see on the screen now is your name, your date of birth, the address, and what cover do you need. So whether that is combined buildings or just contents only. You will already probably know the answer to those 4 questions based on everything I've just talked about for the last 20 minutes in terms of getting to know your customer. Your name and date of birth, obviously, you will have as a given because you're trying to help them buy the property. The question that you're going to have to ask them is, have you made any claims in the last 5 years? If they're a first-time buyer, obviously the answer will be no to that one. The question's asked very differently in terms of, have you had any claims in the last 5 years? Most people will say, how many years no claims benefit have you got? And therefore, you're running past all the previous insurers to try and find out, did I make any claims with that insurer? I can't remember who my insurer was 2 years ago, let alone 5 years ago. So that question is more streamlined to this process. Once you've answered those 5 questions, you have a guaranteed quote that is now valid for the next 180 days. Now, I would recommend you do a quote at the very early opportunity you get with a client. And that simply means you've got a quote, you've got it locked in, it's at that price, it's done. So no matter what happens for the next 180 days in the market, inflation goes up or interest rates go up, you know that that price can't increase because you've already guaranteed the price at the quote stage. Don't have to activate the policy, just simply leave it as a quote. What that also does, it plants again that seed for your clients to think, well, we've already had a quote. When you come back and speak to me about it in 3 or 4 months' time, we're referencing the quote that you've already done for me. So it just brings it back to life for them again. The good thing about our smart quote system, let alone the 180-day quote validity period, is it removes any risk. So as I mentioned on that previous slide, there's only 5 questions that you actually have to ask and input into the system. That means you're only liable for those bits of information. And to be honest, if you get the name, the address, and the date of birth wrong, that there's something seriously gone wrong there. What the smart quote system doesn't ask, it will not ask you, what type of property is it? So it won't ask us, is it a bungalow? Is it a semi-detached? Is it a terraced house? Is it a linked detached? It won't ask you any of those questions. It will not ask you how many bedrooms has it got. It will not ask you how many bathrooms, how flat is your roof, how close do you live to a tall tree. It doesn't ask you any of that information. And that's simply because our system collates all that information via big data. So we use around about 500 data sources now to produce the risk of the properties that you're purchasing. So our data source will tell us how many bedrooms has it got. Our data source will tell us, has it ever been extended? Is it in a high crime rate area? Is it in a flood risk area? How close is it to a fire station, for example? So that means if it's in a fire, how quick is the fire engine going to get to your house? All of that, it tells us. So we carry so much risk on your behalf to remove that liability of getting it wrong in the system. Just imagine how many times have people said, my example, so there's a bedroom in my house that is a bedroom off a bedroom. Now, I know that means it's not a bedroom because it doesn't have its own access. But would Joe Bloggs on the street know that? Or would they simply say it's a 4-bedroom house when it should have been a 3-bedroom house? That's the sort of thing that Smart Quote will help you eradicate and carry that liability risk for you, which hopefully means fewer declining claims and a better customer journey overall for everybody. And with that, that is my whirlwind tour of home insurance in trying to really emphasize the importance that an administrator can have in that home insurance journey. You've got a perfect point to handhold a customer through that mortgage journey, be in regular contact with them for things that are actually important, getting to know them more, what are their hobbies, what are their interests, what are they currently doing in terms of, are they shopping around for furniture, or helps you build a profile to make sure that home insurance policy meets their needs today. And make sure that in the event they make a claim, it is there when they need it most. So hopefully you guys will get access to all those links to the PDFs, and obviously you can use all of those. But yeah, if there are any questions, we'll be happy to take those.
Hi, Scott. Thanks for that. It's a really kind of insightful look at the GI side of things and I guess the trigger points that can be used to strike those conversations with customers when they're on that journey. I think we've done some research fairly recently around, I guess, the protection gap and the role of advisors and administrators in talking to their customers about their GI needs and requirements. And a lot of the feedback we got from that research was around the timing of the process. So a lot of clients are obviously completely focused on the mortgage process and buying that home, and that's the kind of end goal. And the protection piece on the life side, but also on the buildings and contents, comes right at the very, very end of the process, almost as an afterthought. When it gets to the point of exchange and their solicitors are asking them for proof of insurance on the building side of things. Obviously, and I think the need is to strike up those conversations much earlier in the process. But have you got any kind of advice around how to start those, conversations earlier in the process, and what the best kind of workflow is?
Yeah, and so you're absolutely right, Jamie. I think GI is usually sold at the very back end, and that's when panic stations are, panic buttons are pressed, and people are just taking whatever they can to tick that box. But As we mentioned with Smart Quote, because it's very limited information needed to get a quote, you don't need a lot of interaction from the customer from a very early stage to provide them that quote. And one bit that's often missed is obviously when you're doing a fact find and the affordability checks, is you can get a more accurate idea on how much is home insurance going to cost you to go into your budget. And I think that's probably when home insurance falls down a little bit, is when it is at the back end of it and they've budgeted for all these other products, i.e., you know, they've got the home, they've got the income protection, they've got the life, and they've got the kit cover, whatever they've got, and they've got £5 of budget left for any insurance, they're going to check the cheapest possibly they can just at the end journey to get it done for them. So I would always recommend, is because Smart Quote uses a lot of data that we already have for you, do a quote as early as you can, but have the advisor warm it up for the administrator to do. So we're going to do you a quote early on to make sure that, one, you know how much home insurance is going to cost you so we can budget it, but two, because of it being that mandatory part of a mortgage process, it's one hurdle we've already jumped that we know we're not going to fall over at the end of the journey. So I think I would ultimately use it as a bit of a tool for the customer to say, let's remove the barrier now that could mean this mortgage doesn't happen. Because imagine going 4 or 5 months down that mortgage journey and then do a home insurance quote that you can't insure with anybody. What do you do then? Your whole world falls apart, doesn't it? So I think it becomes a very important product to do so early as you can, just to simply say, we're going to remove the barrier now by making sure a home insurance provider has accepted the quote, and that won't be the reason why this mortgage doesn't go ahead.
Yeah, I think the other feedback we got on the research and surveys that we sent out was around, you know, that process at the end that you said, people then having to panic, not really thinking that they can go through an advised process for GI products and hop onto aggregator sites and, you know, the Meerkats and everyone else who's out there, because they think they're going to get the best price through that channel. So I guess there's a need to reiterate the value of advice on this product set, even if it's, you know, a relatively low cost compared to everything else that they're budgeting for.
It absolutely is, and I think this is the role that advisors and administrators can play, is because if you devalue something, then the client takes your word for that as gospel. And if you're not raising home insurance as a priority and such an important part of not only getting the property that you want to purchase, but also making sure you stay there for as long as you want to do, why would they find it just as important? If you're not prepared to talk about it, and we have this feedback all the time from advisors that say, what do you do with your home insurance? Well, I tell them to go online and go and buy it. Well, there you go. You've automatically watered down the importance of it because you're not bothered about it. So why would they be bothered about it? So I think this comes across as the value advice is so key here. And look, we could get any advice cheaper online. I could buy a mortgage online. I could simply go to my bank and tick a box and do it. But that's not the reality. Advisors understand the importance of making sure that the mortgage is right for me, the protection policies are right for me. You just need to raise that importance level of home insurance. I will allow you to understand why this is important for you today, tomorrow, next year, and the year after. And that value of advice is more than anything. I could buy a cheap policy for £15 a month, but if my house burns down, well done, I saved myself a tenner a month because I was paying £15 a month. I can't replace anything because it only cost me £15 a month, but well done me, I saved myself £150 this month. But if I paid a little bit more for a policy that made sure it was a 5-star policy, it covered what I need to, I know all those items are replaced or they're fixed or they're dried out my property because the policy does what it says it would do on the tin.
Yeah. You know, obviously some of the technology that you're implementing and, you know, the smart quote system sounds like it's a bit of a game changer. We've had a couple of comments coming in from the audience saying, you know, advocating how simple it is to use and how effective it is to use as their business. I think, you know, as we're seeing more and more with customers and properties, they're not always the standard that you'd see on a standard new build. So I guess, what kind of does the smart quote system, how does it identify non-standard builds such as thatched houses and deal with those individual property circumstances?
So a lot of it is already on data sources that we would use. So as I said, I could reel off some data sources. So things that you would never have thought about. So Royal Mail, Zoopla, Rightmove, the local council office. All of those sort of data sources are ultimately used as well in our system, and they would all hold one little bit of information. So if you've ever extended your home, for example, you're more than likely to have submitted planning application to the council. So that will tell us, has that been done? The ordnance survey report, that will tell us there was properties built in this area in the 1940s. So we know that property is obviously going to be 80 years old. So all the data sources tell us all that information for you. So again, you remove that risk, and that data is updated and reviewed. I want to say it's every 6 weeks in our system, because obviously everything moves on very quickly. So properties may now be listed status. We will update that in our data source, so we now have that as a reference. And the home insurance renewal works really well with that. So at renewal stage, if you change something, let's say you extended your home halfway through the year, believe me, not many people ring the home insurance to tell them it's been extended, but the planning application will come through in our data source. So when we renew it with you, we can accurately tell you that is based on you've changed your property, or something in the area has changed to reflect a more accurate premium for you.
Great. Scott, I'm really conscious of time. We have had a couple more questions come in, but I'll ensure that those are sent over to you after the event, so you can reach out to them. I know there's been some questions around the kind of onboarding process and how to connect with LV to start utilising the system. So we have within the resources area of the platform some PDFs and some links to LV that you can go in and have a play around with, and we'll be able to send out Scott's details post-event to everyone, so you can connect and see if there's an opportunity for you to link in with LV in terms of their proposition going forward. Hopefully you found that session interesting and engaging. It's great to see so many people on the platform and engaging with the chat. Scott, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate that, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon. In terms of our next session, we've got a really interesting session looking at AI. I know there's been lots of questions around AI today, the integration of it into the mortgage process and how it can make processes and more efficient and create new opportunities for administrators in terms of their workflow. So we look forward to seeing you back at that session at 12 o'clock. Other than that, have a wonderful day.